I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it. Okay. My darkest days in World of Warcraft. I gotta be clear on you, some of this stuff is funny, right? It's really funny, but there's also some stuff which kind of sucks. And I'll explain that when we get there, because it does need some explanation, because in even one of the cases it can be considered a good thing for many, whereas for me it was not too great. So, here we go. The top 5 darkest days I had in World of Warcraft. Alright, let's get into this. I'm going to start light. I'm going to start very light with our darkest days in World of Warcraft, because this topic culminates many periods of time, but all are equally as infuriating, and there's nothing that makes you sadder than when you take an exceptionally good player that you would take with you on any piece of content in World of Warcraft, and then everything you know about them crumbles down to dust. My pick here, any fight in this game that involves somebody being inside a vehicle.
Why is it so hard? Why? Why on earth is it so hard when you get something that's just 3 buttons and players can't do it? Every single time there's a vehicle fight announced, I'm one, excited because it's going to give us something new, something interesting, something to mix it up, and then terrified that somebody I consider the gold standard of this game is just going to suck so badly, and I'm going to have to listen to hours and hours of, well, my UI doesn't show that, or whatever. Terran Gorfine, the ghost thing. Oh my god, the only clip I have of Terran Gorfine that was from the actual time shows the entire raid dying at the end. Why? That guy. That guy got the ghost, and we know that guy can't do it. Why? I don't know. It even got to the stage where I would sub in as a DPS in my prot gear and just stay in prot and just dual wield weapons I had so I could do the ghost game because I could do it. And other people would wipe the entire raid team because they couldn't press Ice Lance and Frost Nova. It's like they'd never played another class in this game and their mind would collapse. Malagos, all it required you to do was build combo points and use them to either shield yourself or to do a damaging spell. That was it. There was nothing else to it. All you had to do was press those 3 things. Oh, am I getting targeted? Cool. Press shield and you would be fine. Oh, Flame Leviathan! Flame Leviathan! I can't see Pyrite on the boss. All you had to do was keep your stack of Pyrite ticking. It didn't matter. You didn't need to spam the button. Once the stacks were ticking, just keep it ticking. All you had was a dot that you had to refresh. Everyone else did the work for you and they couldn't do it. My darkest days in WoW are any of these fights because every single time it crushed my friendliness with players. Players that I loved playing with, players that I would do anything with, but my god, every single vehicle fight that has ever been put into World of Warcraft has made me look at them with a different way, with a more sinister way, with a more way.
My next darkest day that I had in WoW actually starts super positive, with a boss that isn't considered hard, and in fact is a classic boss, so many of you will have killed this boss recently. Yet what happened to my guild cost me all my good players, except for me.
Major Domo. Major Domo is not considered a hard fight, yet for my classic guild, the Berserkers, that's right, it was a weird one. And this seriously cost me, I think, months of my life. Major Domo was a boss that we finally reached. As a classic guild, an original vanilla classic guild, reaching Major Domo was a big deal because this is one step away from reaching Ragnaros himself. Standing in front of Major Domo, with Nups at my side, We spent no less than 30 minutes. In his memory, it was something like an hour. I'd say it was about 30 minutes, as I was the raid leader, planning every single element of this fight. Where the ads were going to go, who was tanking what, who was going to kick it, what's going to happen over here, which healers are going to transfer here. After that ad dies, what's that healer going to do? We spent all that time meticulously planning every detail of Major Domo. At that point, Nups ran in and he gave the ice block, pulled the boss, and we one-shot Major Domo. We one-shot Major Domo. And we all sat there like we were idiots. This fight is so easy. Why did we waste all this time? As you can imagine, with a 40-man raid and a half an hour to maybe an hour's downtime, people getting a little pissed and frustrated. Yet there was the results. We one-shotted this boss, and we were now the kings of Molten Core. As it was the end of the raid night, because we'd spent so long planning Domo, we went down and just had a quick silly pull on Ragnaros and didn't really get anywhere. Come to next reset. Major Domo did not die. Major Domo wiped our guild all night, to the decries of, we killed this in one shot last week. How can we fail this fight? This fight is so easy. We clapped it last week. The raid team is the same. Just do what you did last week. Why are you causing us all these problems? Everybody's playing the same. Wipe and wipe and wipe. We did not see Ragnaros that week. The next week it happened again. The next week, it happened again. I wish I could sit back here and tell you exactly what went wrong. But what I can tell you is by the second week, 3 of our best players moved on to Blackwing Lair guilds because we were stuck on Major Domo and we couldn't kill it. The following week, 5 more. And the following week, 6 more. Eventually, we did overcome Major Domo, but at that point, the typical crew that you would see in a 40-man raid of 10 to 15 players had moved on. They were no longer satisfied. And on we did go to kill Ragnaros. But my guild, that day, that week, changed from a guild that was progressing smoothly and happily to a guild where I was the raid leader and ultimately would become the guild master into a feeder guild. As we were recruiting new players, more would leave. The new players would get their gear and then they would move on. And it would continue like this for the next 6 months. And you know the sad thing is, now I think about it, I didn't see the forest for the trees. I didn't see that's what we had become. And it wouldn't be for some time that I would ultimately realise my horror.
There's a moment that happens to a lot of players when the writing is so clear on the wall that it is over for your guild. Now you might be thinking of the last couple of guilds I've been in that died very, very quickly, including my most recent one, but that's not the point. The guild I'm talking about actually continued to play for some time, but I knew at this moment, I watched in horror as I knew that I had just wasted months of my life for absolutely nothing. And I think we've all been there. Let me tell you the tale of Veilstraz the Corrupt.
Following the events of Major Domo, and we did eventually down Ragnaros, which meant it was time for Blackwing Lair. This is when something dawned on me very apparent. 30 to 40% of my guild had absolutely no interest in Blackwing Lair. They considered it too hard. Their friends had told them it was too hard. They were only interested in Molten Core gear. Even though most of them had most of it, they were still looking for 1 or 2 little pieces to complete set bonuses, transmog before it was even cool, all that kind of stuff. And they considered openly telling us that going to Blackwing Lair before every single person in the guild was fully equipped in Molten Core gear was a waste of time. Now, as you may have heard in our last section, we had kind of become a feeder guild. People were joining, collecting some items and moving on to better guilds. So it wasn't even realistic that we could gear everybody in the guild in Molten Core gear because people were leaving at the same time. I pushed, and for months, I mean literally months, we wiped on Razorgore the Untamed. I took it upon myself to control the egg breaking, giving coordination to people. I found that our hunters could not kite. In fact, I had our resto shamans kite because they were simply better players, and they were able to do it. But ultimately, Razorgore fell. To delight and cheers. After my scheming in order to even get them into the raid, tricking them into saying it was Molten Core raid night, but actually saying now you need to go to Blackwing Lair, we did do it. And before us stood Veilstraz. Veilstraz at this time had easily been worked out as to how you kill it. The strategy, the mechanics had all been figured out a long time ago for my guild, so I didn't expect it to be what it was. It took about 5 pulls for me to see the horror that I was a part of. For months at this point, I had always hoped for my guild. I had tried hard in recruiting. I had raid-led as best I thought possible, even to the point of becoming frustrated and angry with the players, but I always believed the berserkers would rise, and the berserkers would be the guild. All the time, my friends who had left, who liked me and wanted to play with me, were whispering me saying, why are you still in that guild? Why are you still farming Anixia's Lair, for Christ's sake, as a guild and not on an off night? Why are you still doing Molten Core? We're here. We're doing AQ. We're doing things like that, and you're still pissing about in Blackwing Lair. And I would tell them, because this guild can make it. This guild can do it. About 5 pulls into Vale, not going down more than 1 or 2%. People making obvious mistakes. I knew it was done. And it was at that point I realised I had sunk a good 6 months of my life into an utter waste of time that wasn't going anywhere. This was never going to happen. And this was the moment I knew that it was over for me. And I think I left the guild the next day. I think I went out not on friendly terms either. This is easily one of the darkest days in World of Warcraft for me.
Okay, next up is a tough one because this guild is still around today. It is Method. It is the first time I joined them. I was in Method twice, and this was what started the ball rolling in me leaving the guild. Now, I want to be super clear on this, because people are awful on the internet, is that none of the people who were involved in what I'm about to tell you still play in that guild. At all. Absolutely none of them. In fact, I'm 99% sure that everybody I'm going to reference in this video, and I will not mention them by name, left within the next 2 or 3 months after I left, because they were clearly a problem that wasn't just apparent to me. Let's go.
So it finally happened. I was able to get into Method, and alongside that I was asked when I joined during Wrath of the Lich King, was there any other players that they think should come along? Now this is before we had faction transfers or character swaps, so I had to level from scratch. I was asked to be a Warlock as the guild was currently progressing in Ulduar and wanted more Warlocks for Yogg-Saron. So Warlock it was supposed to be. I made my little Nomi Warlock and off I went, and it was kind of strange environment that I walked into. It was not a good time for Method at all. They'd come off the back of several world seconds and were really looking to get that final hurdle done. When the invite came, I was so excited, and I spent the next few days just hammering and hammering and hammering. And then the next time I had to go to work within that week. So I did something that actually a lot of the guild was fine with. I let somebody else, a friend of mine, play my account just to get some levels so we could actually start raiding. Now, some of my other friends that came with me, they already had level 60 Alliance characters, or level 70 or whatever they were at the time, and they were able to start raiding immediately. And they were telling me, it's tough. These guys are really pro. They're hardcore. They are super, super good, just like you would expect to be. They go fast, they go hard. You are going to love this. Sounds good to me. Upon capping, or close to capping, Yogg-Saron Zero Lights died. This was a bad news for me. They no longer needed extra Warlocks. They had learnt from Stars that having extra Warlocks was a really, really good thing for Yogg-Saron Zero Lights, but it died just as I was about to cap, so I never got to be part of that progression. Once I did cap though, I was still made a part of the raid team, and of course Ulduar was dropping legendary shards for Valnir, the Hammer of the Ancient Kings, which meant the guild was running 2 Ulduar groups, which meant I got to go along. Now, there are several things that contributed me to ultimately leave the guild. Some were a bit more personal than others, especially when it came to my friends and some of the treatment they got. But the guild was not in a good place, and I really want to make this clear because although the guild is Method, the only surviving member there I believe now is Sko, and before the recent fallout with Method, it was only Just Wait and Roger Brown that was still there, and none of them were ever contributing to anything that happened to me here. In fact, a full cleaning out of the guild took place around this period of time. So I got to go to Ulduar in Team 1 or Team 2. My first red flag was being screamed at by somebody, and this was for doing my job on Flame Leviathan, being called shit and all this. Turned out they were talking about someone else, and this happened when I keyed up, because me being me, I said, who the fuck are you talking to? Why are you screaming at me? What are you even fucking talking about? And then it became apparent they weren't even talking about me. They just assumed that the warlock they could see making a ton of mistakes was the new trial. In fact, it was their established warlock that was making these mistakes. Red flag number 1. But the major red flag came during my first raid in Ulduar that wasn't just that. When a boss died and loot came out, the rule at the time was that trials were on par with alts. Alts, of course, were alts of mains who had established themselves as being potential world first raiders, and therefore they were entitled to get some loot on their alts because their alts may be used in some form of world first progression. That made a lot of sense to me, and I never had a problem with that. I want to be clear, I'm fully understanding of how important main established characters being available for main established raids is probably more important than trials. It also became apparent to me in talking to some of the more friendly members of the guild, including Justway and Roger Brown, is that trials are often very, very many and very few get to stay, and that's not because of skill. What's tended to happen with the top-end guilds is people would apply just for the opportunity to play in them with no intention of actually taking part in any sort of world-first progression or the commitment that would require. What that meant is often they were taking in lots of recruits, expecting them to all leave. So, needless to say, trials were somewhat frowned upon in the guild. They were not seen in a good light. So when something dropped, and I forget the item, I think it was a ring. A ring drops that was BIS stats for my warlock, so obviously I rolled on it, and it went to an alt. An alt won it over me. Fair enough, no problem, carried on with the raid. Then I received a whisper. Hey, trial, do you want to buy this ring? I, obviously very confused, whispered back with a question mark. What do you mean? It's like, you can buy it off me, I don't need it. So why did you roll on it? It's like, because I want some gold. It's like, this is a guild run. Why would you ever want gold off a guildie? You're not a guildie. You're a trial. And you four deserve to pay for this stuff. This was the uber red flag, and the kind of the moment I knew I was not going to be sticking around if this was the kind of thing that was going to happen. It was probably, and no, not even probably, this is still one of the most bizarre moments I've ever experienced in World of Warcraft for me. Not only did it put this sourest taste of what was easily the most exciting time of World of Warcraft, I was hyper into World of Warcraft. The prospect of doing World First Progression was the culmination of all the years of effort I'd put in up until that point, and now I was there to do it, and this is what I was met with. I will say there was great moments alongside this. Some of the 10-man Ulduar runs that I got to do with Roger and stuff were some of the most fun. I had some of the Dragon Soul stuff with some of the more cooler players like Sparko were absolutely amazing. But the writing was clearly on the wall at this point. This was not to be my home. And I think I left shortly after this. What a sad, sad taste. And I'm glad to say that the guild moved on very, very well since that moment.
What was my darkest day in World of Warcraft? Well, I could talk about some other things, like when LFD came into the game and I was suddenly introduced to just how bad a lot of the player base was. But for those guys, it was the best time ever. Those were people who couldn't get into groups because they were absolutely awful, now had a queuing system. That was a dark day. It was a very dark day, but it was a dark day for a lot of people, not really personal to me. In fact, my darkest day was when the guild I would loved the most, at the time, absolutely adored in every single way, shape or form, and would have happily continued to play there for the remainder of my World of Warcraft days, died. Where did it die? Freya Hard Mode. A guild that had overcome every challenge in the world came crashing down for Freya Hard Mode. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to regale you with the tale of the one, the only, Gokufan.
The final story I want to tell you is the death of, I would say, my favourite or very close to guild that I ever played in World of Warcraft, and that would be Kill Count Lost. Kill Count Lost was a Greek-run guild during the Burning Crusade. It was my first foray into top 100 raiding. This was a top 40 guild in the world, and actually just enjoyed being with them so much. I moved up very, very quickly from a guild that was the Berserkers, or Confused I think it was at the end of Classic, to this guild. I moved on from I moved up maybe a 2,000 guild rankings, and it was only on the back of the best conversation I've ever had in terms of a trial for a guild. I sat and talked with the soon-to-be very close friend who would be the first person I would ever have sleeping at my home, who I knew from World of Warcraft and meet IRL multiple times, Erebus, the main tank of Kill Count Lost. I sat and talked shop with him in terms of tanking stuff, as I was a tank, for about 3 hours while he was doing his Blackwing Lair run, and ultimately asked me the questions that I would want to know of a tank. He asked me everything I wanted to care about. He asked me about the nerd stuff, the real nitty-gritty. Didn't mess about, was not beating about the bush. Absolutely fell in love with talking with this guy and knew that we could tank together as a harmonic unit. It was amazing. Upon getting the invite, though, I had nowhere near the gear of them. They were farming Illidan Stormrage at the time, and I had just about done Hyjal. I had not seen a single Black Temple boss, let alone had farmed it. So on their first introduction, when I moved to their realm, I walked up to the rogue officer, who was the only officer online at the time, and he said, "Can you come quickly so I can inspect you? We are expecting a tank, but people try and join our guild all the time." So me being me, I put on a pair of underpants and I think a tank top or something on my Tauren warrior, unequipped all my gear, and ran up to him saying, "Inv, inv, inv." And with a big smile on his face, he went, "Yep, you're the guy. I was warned about you." So I got invited. I passed my trial in my first raid with... it was interesting to see that Erebus recognized that I was a good tank and instantly promoted me, and the guild was like, absolutely not a surprise. Dealing with Illidan's ads in the way you did was awesome. For someone who's never seen it before, yes, incredible. I loved this guild. So why did it die? It died because of Freya 3. Freya hard mode. Freya hard mode in Ulduar is not a particularly difficult fight at all. It's complex, it's brutal, but it's a rinse-repeat process. You can learn, you repeat the same phase twice, and once you understand each of those phases, it's not that difficult. And certainly I left this guild to join Method. It was night and day in terms of seeing this fight done. Yet we had a strategy in mind, ladies and gentlemen, a strategy that was the best for us, because it should have been the absolute simplest mechanic in the world. And that is that at one point during Freya 3 hard mode, Freya summons a bunch of flowers. These flowers can be taunted, but there's loads of them, and they spread out very quickly, and they melee very hard, and there's lots of other things going on in the fight at the time, so people could die very easily during this. However, there's a very obvious solution to this. Warriors carry a spell called Challenging Shouts, and we had 2 warriors, which meant on the first time it spawned the flowers, one of the tanks could press Challenging Shout, which would put all the flowers into one area, and then we could just CC them in one spot and kill them. Now, the problem was they broke CC very, very quickly. We could keep them slowed, but you'd have stragglers running around, and this would wipe us regularly. Now, I will be the first to admit there were definitely other ways of dealing with this, but this is what we were going with. So, what did we do? We looked to our Elemental Shamans. Elemental Shamans and Moonkins were a big deal at the time. They provided a massive bonus to the spellcasters in their group, so it actually only made sense to have one in. They also had a spell where their Earthbind totem would root everything, and it would last for quite a while, which meaning it was super easy to AoE down these flowers. 12 Shamans we went through. 12. The guild died upon the recruitment of Gokufan. Gokufan, the anime hero, joined our guild as our last-ditch savior. Of course, I could put all the blame onto Gokufan, but Gokufan isn't really the be-all and end-all of this. We started to have players drift away once we had become hard stuck, as players tend to do, but Gokufan was to be our savior. As it was said in the officer chat and in private amongst the long-term members, if this last guy doesn't work out for us, because we really do need an Elemental Shaman anyway, it's not about just this, we do want one, then we're going to stop raiding for a while. We're going to come to a stop, and we might just stop entirely. This is it. The guild is tired of recruiting and tired of not being able to find a player capable of pressing Earthbind at the right time. So here comes Gokufan, the savior of the guild, yet he doesn't know it. And I will pile all the blame on him, even though it's obviously not his fault. Gokufan, our hero, is stood in front of Freya 3. The flowers spawn. The challenging shout is thrown out, and Gokufan heroically jumps into the middle of them all and instantly dies. Okay. Alright. Okay. Next pull, we say, Gokufan, Gokufan! Just drop it near them. You don't need to go into melee range. Just drop it near them. That's all you need to do. Okay, says Gokufan. I got it. On the next pull, Gokufan runs into the flowers before the challenging shout and roots them all spread out as far as the eye can see. We wipe again. So we say, Gokufan! Gokufan! Not like this. It goes, challenging shout, the flowers move together. Then drop that Earthbind, Gokufan. Just press the button. Just press it. Just press it. Real close like. Okay, I got this. The challenging shout goes out in the next pull and the flowers are gathered together. And what do we see? But Gokufan stands still. He stands channeling that chain lightning into all those ads. And we're saying, Gokufan! Why don't you drop the totem? It says it's on cooldown. So we say, how is that possible? I fat fingered it. So we wipe again as the flowers overrun the raid. Next pull. Here we go again. Gokufan says he's got this. He understands it. It's perfect. The challenge shout goes out. The flowers gather together. They're stunned. They're in place. And Nova to help. And Gokufan doesn't drop his totem. The flowers start to spread. They're beginning to move apart. So then we see Gokufan. He runs in and drops it. Sorry, I forgot. He lets us know. That was to be the final raid night of Kill Count Lost. Those are some of the best people I ever played with. And I'm thankful and I'm appreciative every day that I have managed to play with more. But the disappointment, the sadness, the giving up that I could feel in the raid team that night, I'll never forget. It was the darkest day in WoW for me.
So there it is. That was some pretty grim days, right? And I want to be clear, there's no one to blame that's still even playing this game, but it was rough. It was rough for a little time, especially a couple of those things. I'm going to continue to work on this, and I will see you again next Friday. So thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Hey guys, it's Mike. Thank you once again for watching. Remember, these videos are not really created by me anymore. They're created by our team, thanks to your wonderful support over on our website, breachgaming.com. If you choose to support, pick up a cool shirt like this, do whatever you want to do, then that is truly appreciated. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.